Okay, we had a fascinating discussion. Let's see what you guys think. Question 1, Benedict calls himself a tyrant to women. What do you think this says about their effect on him and why? Here, okay, so this is page 225. Bottom left, Claudio is asking Benedict's opinion of Hero, right? He says, line 158, is she not a modest young lady? And Benedict replies, do you question me? Do you ask me, as an honest man should do, for my simple, true judgment? Or would you have me speak after my custom, my habit, as being a professed tyrant to their sex? So the footnote tells us tyrant here means one with a cruel or pitiless attitude. So he's saying that he behaves cruelly without pity toward women. He also says that he is a professed tyrant, which means he calls himself a tyrant, which means he wants people, specifically women, to think of him as a tyrant. So it's a matter of self-presentation and a self-image. And then finally, here he gives Claudio a choice. Do you want me to perform my usual attitude, or do you want me to give you my honest opinion? So already we know that it's just a performance. He does have a separate, more honest opinion of specific women. So the question is, why does he do this performance? And could it be related to how women have influenced him? So the group I talked to gave 3 slightly different interpretations of this behavior. Number 1, maybe he is not confident in his abilities as a romantic partner. And so he's using this attitude to avoid entering into a new romantic relationship. The second one is maybe he does not want just any woman. Maybe he wants the woman to kind of like prove herself. So this attitude is a kind of test or filter. And if a woman can take him even with this attitude, then he knows he can trust his heart to her. And this attitude would then be against their common enemies and not against that woman. The third interpretation is that maybe he's using this attitude to attract a specific kind of woman who likes cruel and pitiless men. Um, and as I was talking with them, I reminded this group that we will learn later, or we did learn this week, that Benedict has been in a romantic relationship before. He was previously in some kind of relationship with Beatrice. If we look at page 231, line 264, Don Pedro the prince tells Beatrice, come, lady, come, you have lost the heart of Signor Benedict. And Beatrice replies, indeed, my lord, he lent it me a while, and I gave him use for it, a double heart for his single one. Marry, once before he won it of me with false dice. Therefore your grace may well say I have lost it. So here the footnote tells us that the word use means interest. Like if you borrow money, you have to pay more money back. So she's saying that he lent her his heart and she gave him twice the amount of love. But he won her with false dice, some kind of dishonesty, trickery. And so now they are not together anymore. So Benedict was in some kind of relationship with Beatrice. Now, how did the relationship end? Beatrice says it's Benedict's fault. I'm pretty sure if you asked Benedict, he would say that it's Beatrice's fault. So with this new information, we can go back to our previous three interpretations, see if we can add some more understanding. The first one is Benedict feels unconfident in romantic relationships, maybe because his previous relationship was this one. And when it ended, Beatrice blames him or blamed him. And so maybe this has harmed his confidence because it is not how he understands the way that their relationship ended. The second interpretation was that he uses this attitude as a kind of test. Maybe he's thinking most women are more like Beatrice, so he wants to find the women that are to him like better than Beatrice. So he's using that attitude as a test. Obviously, Beatrice does not pass the test because she keeps on arguing with him. The third interpretation is he's using this attitude as to attract a different kind of woman. Again, Beatrice is not that kind of woman, obviously, as we can see. So maybe he's using that as a way to, like, to make sure that the next woman who falls for him uh, will be different from the kind of woman he thinks Beatrice is. So, like, no matter how we look at this, it does make sense for his current behavior to be the result of his past relationship with Beatrice. Okay, do you guys have other thoughts or questions about number one? Moving on to number two, we didn't have a group four today, so I'll just answer this uh, directly. So, like, for most of this scene before the party, everybody speaks in prose. Even like the nobles or the important characters, everybody speaks in prose. It's going to be a party. In traditional Western culture, parties are an occasion where you can put down the etiquette. You don't have to respect authority or hierarchy. Everybody gets to have fun together, especially if it is a masked party and you don't know who you're talking to. In that case, authority has a temporary pause. You don't have to always respect authority during this party. And that's probably why the entire scene is in prose. So there's no distinction between the more important and less important characters. However, from line 90 to 93, this is in verse. And the meter is also different. As we said earlier in the semester, Shakespeare's usual meter is blank verse, unrhymed iambic pentameter. Dun 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 dun. 5 feet, unstressed and stressed for every line. But here it's different. Let me read it to you, see if you can hear the difference. My visor is Philemon's roof, within the house is Jove. Why then your visor should be thatched. Speak low if you speak love. As the footnote says, it is 14-syllable rhymed couplet. Okay, iambic pentameter is 10 syllables. Here it's 14 syllables. Da dun 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 da dun. And blank verse is usually not rhymed, but here we do have a rhyme: Jove and love. So why? Why use this meter here? The first possible reason is because they are dancing. There is music. So it's kind of to reflect the fact that it's not regular conversation. They are talking in the middle of music. But there's another possible reason. The footnote tells us that this specific meter is used in Arthur Golding's translation of the Metamorphoses, 变形记. And if you know anything about the Metamorphoses, do you know anything about the Metamorphoses? No. The Metamorphoses is a collection of love myths and love stories. So this is the meter used in a book of love stories. So using this meter, we are supposed to get a feeling that these two characters are doing something related to love. And in fact, they are, right? Don Pedro is pursuing Hero on behalf of Claudio. So this scene is the beginning of his pursuit. Um, and by using this meter, it tells the reader or the audience that they have begun. And so even if we don't see the rest of their conversation, we know what Don Pedro is trying to do. And we also get a sense that Hero accepts him or reciprocates, 也回应, because she also replies in the same meter. So like Don Pedro and Hero together create this love poetry. And so that tells the reader, that tells the audience that Don Pedro is probably going to succeed and win Hero's heart on behalf of Claudio. And this is a nice contrast to the second half. After they dance to one side, we now meet another set of dancers, and their conversation does not follow the love meter. So we know that these characters are not going to end up in a relationship of true love. Okay, further thoughts or questions about number two? All right, number three, same place. Which set of stage directions do you think makes more sense and why? So originally, here we have Balthasar and Margaret dancing and talking together. But the footnote says, uh, in a different version of the play or a different source of the play, instead of Balthasar, we have Benedict and Balthasar. So some of Balthasar's lines might belong to Benedict. And personally, I think it's probably the first half. Uh, so maybe after Margaret says, God matched me with a good dancer, which is kind of insulting Benedict to say he's not a good dancer. Maybe Benedict and Balthazar switch, and she ends up dancing with Balthazar. That way we have both Benedict and Balthazar in the same scene. But the footnote continues. Some editors speculate that Borachio is intended. So in this third possibility, it's not Balthazar, it's not Benedict. The whole thing is Borachio and Margaret. So like which one makes more sense and why? So I talked with one group about this. The first option, Balthazar. Balthazar is the musician. So having Balthazar talking and dancing with Margaret, Margaret is the servant of Beatrice, doesn't seem to tell us a lot of information. It's simply saying that they're having fun at a party. No wonder there is debate about this issue, because the original text makes very little sense. The second option, if we change the first half to Benedict, we just talked about how Benedict says he doesn't want to be in a romantic relationship. He doesn't want to be in a relationship with just any woman. But look at what Benedict would say here. Well, I would you did like me, and then I love you the better. This does not seem to fit with Benedict's self-image. But remember, he's wearing a mask. Nobody knows that this is Benedict. So Maybe this is when he gets to express his honest feelings. So if this part were Benedict, then we would get a glimpse into his mind where in fact he is quite lonely. He does want to be in a romantic relationship. And this would help prepare us for the ending of this play so that it's not a big surprise when we see Benedict and Beatrice falling in love. Finally, the third option, maybe this entire a part of this scene is Margaret dancing with Baracchio. Baracchio, if you remember, is the servant of Don John. Don John is the bad guy. And as we will see in 3 weeks or in 2 weeks, Don John's plan to break up Hero and Claudio is to have Baracchio uh, go to Hero's room and spend some time with Margaret. So Baracchio and Margaret, how did they two end up together? Maybe the first hint would be this scene when these two characters dance together and kind of start flirting with each other. This would lay the foundation for the later trickery to break up Hero and Claudio. So we have three options, and I talked to this group, and they said they think the second option makes more sense, the one that I corrected, so that the first half is Benedict and the second half is Balthazar. So obviously, it's not very important to say that everybody is having fun at a party. So option one is probably not the best one. Option three would give us more insight into Baracchio and Margaret, but as this group said, those two characters are not very important. Benedict is more important, so it makes more sense for us to get more information about Benedict rather than Baracchio. And also, often when we read a story, watch a movie, we don't really care about why the bad guy does bad things, right? We care more about why the hero does good things. So in that sense, it would make more sense for this to be Benedict instead of Baracchio. And then they also asked the question, if Balthazar makes the least sense, why did this editor choose Balthazar? And the answer is because the source text, the most dependable version of this play, uses Balthazar. And it's not a clear mistake. Like it could work. It would give us very little information, but it could work. So the editor probably thought there's no necessary reason to change the character. But because there may be some better options, he gives us these better options in the footnotes, in case we think that the original makes no sense. So the most dependable version of the play is in the folio. A folio um, is a larger format, a more prepared format. It was published after Shakespeare's death by his friends. So it feels more authoritative and dependable. Um, the option with Benedict and Balthazar comes from the quarto text. A quarto is a smaller format and is usually written by audience members or actors in the play after seeing the play or after performing the play, and it's written from memory. You might be thinking, wow, the people in the past had such great memories. They could memorize a whole play after watching it once. Not exactly. That's why the quarto is less dependable. It's based on memory, and then for the specific details that they may have forgotten, they add whatever makes sense, whatever fits the meter and verse. So yes, quartos are less dependable, but in this case, this possibility does seem to make more sense. So our editor has added this in the footnote. Finally, Baracchio does not seem to have a textual source, But the idea seems to be, if we can change it to something else, then the best possible option might be Borachio. Some editors might think this. So in any case, this shows us the importance of the editor when reading Shakespeare. Depending on the specific editor, you might get a completely different scene. Okay, questions or thoughts about number 3? All right, number 4. There seems to be a silence here. How would you perform it? So this is on page 231.5. And so this is where Don Pedro tells Claudio that he has one hero for him. Right? I have broke with her father and his goodwill obtained. She is yours. And her father, Leonato, gives his blessing. Then Beatrice says, "Speak, Count, 'tis your cue," which means he is not speaking. He is quiet. He is silent. So, how would you perform this silence on the stage? The group I talked to had some great ideas. So, this scene has basically two groups of people. One group is Don Pedro, Leonato, and Hero. The other group is Beatrice and Claudio. And those two enter the scene later. If you look at the previous page, it says, enter Claudio and Beatrice. So they come later. So this group says, okay, on the stage, uh, the prince, Leonato, and Hero standing slightly on one side, and then Claudio and Beatrice enter from the other side. When they enter, Claudio still thinks that Don Pedro is going to betray him. So maybe he has prepared a speech to um, like to declare how evil Don Pedro is or something. So maybe he's holding a speech in his hand and he's preparing for the right moment to give his speech. Then he hears uh, the prince say, "I have one hero for you. Here she is." So of course he is shocked. This is completely opposite of what he was expecting. So this group says, as he is shocked, the lighting changes. This is a modern performance. And now we get a spotlight on Claudio, and the rest of the stage grows darker. And they also add some romantic violin music. And so Claudio is unable to say anything coherent, but maybe his mouth is still moving like he's trying to say something. Maybe he looks at his speech and then puts it back down again as if he can't believe that he's not going to use that speech. And then maybe he drops the speech and slowly approaches Hero. He doesn't know what to say, but he knows what's going on. So maybe like when Beatrice says, "Speak, Count, 'tis your cue," he has reached Hero. He is holding her hand. And then he gives this new speech. "Silence is the perfect herald of joy." Blah, blah, blah. And then they kiss. Then at this point, if you remember, Don Pedro is on one side and Beatrice is on the other side. But as the scene continues, these two start talking. And it would be kind of awkward if they're shouting their lines from the opposite ends of the stage. So how do we get Beatrice from that side to this side? Maybe while the two lovers are kissing and while the spotlight is still on them, Beatrice kind of sneaks in front of them, kind of walks over secretly. And this could be kind of funny because the audience will see her kind of interrupting their kiss, so to speak. So like the lovers are kissing in the background, Beatrice kind of sneaks from the front over to Don Pedro. And so now the two of them and Leonato, the three of them, are looking at the kissing lovers, and Don Pedro and Beatrice are chatting about what has just happened. And then somewhere around here, the spotlight ends and we go back to our regular lighting. So, like one single line implies one action, and that gets us to think about the whole design and performance of this scene. In this class, I'm not asking you to perform Shakespeare. We're reading him. But as we read, we should remember that it is still a play. It is still a performance. And so from time to time, you can think about, okay, how would that look on stage? What would the actors do? Not just what would they say. Thoughts or questions about number 4? All right, finally, number 5, compare the Benedict and Beatrice that we saw today with Petruchio and Caterina. So the group I talked with said, firstly, the most obvious difference is that Petruchio and Caterina were violent, and Benedict and Beatrice are simply arguing. They don't make each other suffer physically. Another difference seems to be that Petruchio is trying to control Caterina, but today we don't see Benedict trying to control Beatrice. If we go back to the first time they argue on page 225, uh, near line 121, Benedict says, I had would I could find in my heart that I had not a hard heart, for truly I love none. He's saying, if only I could love a woman, but no, indeed, I cannot love a single woman. Beatrice replies, a dear happiness to women. They would else have been troubled with a pernicious suitor. I thank God in my cold blood I am of your humor for that. I had rather hear my dog bark at a crow than a man swear he loves me. So she's saying basically, thank God you don't like women, otherwise you would make women suffer every time you pursue them. And also, thank God, I also am not interested in romance. I am of your humor means I feel the same way you do. And then Benedict replies, God keep your ladyship still in that mind, so some gentleman or other shall scape a predestinate scratched face. So he's also saying, thank God you are not interested in dating men, otherwise some man would end up with their face scratched by you. So it seems like they're not trying to control each other. They're more kind of trying to prove that they are absolutely, resolutely not at all interested in each other, which tells us that they are kind of interested in each other, right? As this group said, otherwise, why are you saying this? Why don't you just leave? And we know that they had previously been in some kind of relationship before. So what we have here is not two people who simply don't like each other. We have two exes who have still not gotten over each other. And when they meet, they still have all of these strong feelings about each other. This is very different from the relationship between Petruchio and Kate. In that play, they met for the first time. But there is a similarity in the way that they talk. In both plays, the man and the woman often argue with each other. We can say that Caterina even likes arguing with men, and Petruchio likes arguing with Caterina. If you remember, he says, like, he is of a similar temperament with Caterina, so, like, don't worry about me, I can handle her. Similarly here, these two keep insulting each other, but it does feel like they're having a good time insulting each other. It's kind of fun for them. They would rather do this than not do this when they meet. So in that sense, the two couples do have that similarity. Um, Somehow this kind of exchange is attractive to them for some reason, although the reason might be different. Okay, any thoughts or questions about that one? Okay, so that's today's discussion. Before next week, please read to the end of Act 3. Right, so please read to the end of Act 3 before next week. Okay, let's take attendance.